I'm Linda Mal, and welcome to Art This Week. On this week's episode, we visit the Modern Art Museum of Fort Worth, and our interviewer, Rachel Livedalen, speaks with artist Nina Chanel Abney about her exhibition, Focus, Nina Chanel Abney. Now for Art This Week. Hi, I'm Rachel Livedalen here with Nina Chanel Abney at the Modern. Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Can you tell us a little bit about the exhibition here in the Modern? What works are included?
Well, 2 paintings from my last show that was just in the fall from Jack Shaman Gallery, and then 1 large piece from a show that I had earlier in the summer at Jack's school.
I've come across a lot of essays that describe you as, quote, a contemporary history painter.
Oh.
How do you respond to that? What do you make of that term?
Well, I try to focus on current events in the news, so I guess in a sense down the line I'll become a history painter, but I try to stay in the moment with every body of work.
One thing that I love most about your paintings is how you use the multiple panels. And in some instances, I see that you're using them so that you can work really large, like mural size. And then in other instances, you're almost breaking up the composition into smaller vignettes. Mm-hmm. How do you approach that structure?
It's usually just very intuitive. I feel like I'm trying to think of the last diptych I've done, because last show I worked on large single panels, but it's really just a feeling as I'm going along with the work, because I don't sketch anything out. So as I'm creating it, if it just feels right, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing that you don't sketch anything and you just attack these canvases. How do you typically approach a new work? Can you walk us through your process?
Okay, so before I start a body of work, I might come up with very general ideas of what I want to paint about. I'll gather different photo resources and do a lot of research on different topics. Sometimes I make a playlist to listen to in the studio while I'm creating the work, and from there, it's just all intuitive. So when I start a painting, I start with just flat color, and it's really a layering process.
And you use a lot of symbols and letters and text. What are those doing in the works? Where are those coming from?
It comes from a little bit of everything. I think now it's from my interest in emojis and trying to create like a simplified language that everyone can understand and bring their own meaning to it. So one symbol could mean, a million things depending on where you're coming from.
And now the symbols, you're using stenciling to create those, is that correct?
Yeah, so lately, now that I've been using spray paint, in addition to acrylic, I'll create my own stencils and use that.
Do you reuse certain stencils?
Oh, all the time. I've kind of accumulated a library at this point. My stencils, so I do reuse them because sometimes I'll use them in different ways. So like a heart might end up being someone's hair, so I try to find different ways to use the same stuff too.
Yeah, I do love how in certain areas, especially in the figures, we have symbols that are occurring outside, like the X becomes the mouth, but then the X is also
and that's a heart for the hair.
There it is.
And even with like flat color, I was always criticized for painting flat, but I did a couple of collages maybe in 2010, the same time where I think like the internet changed my work, that collage changed my work in thinking about layering flat shapes. Mm-hmm. To still give a sense of space.
Yeah, I do really love all the layering. And you deal with some pretty heavy topics, including contemporary politics. Other works deal with police brutality, yet there seems to be a strong sense of play in the work through the vibrant color, through your choice of symbols. How do you view the role of humor in your work?
Well, I've always been interested in like sarcastic cartoons since I was a child. And I feel like I learned very on, at least for myself, like work that handles heavy subject matter. Most people look at it and kind of walk away from it if it's like pretty straightforward. But with the use of color and some humor, all of a sudden people become a little more comfortable in viewing it.
Let's talk about color a little bit more, because it's definitely a really striking component in the work. How do you choose your color? Why the vibrant color palette? How do you select certain colors for a particular topic?
Lately, I feel like sometimes I'll get in a zone where I'm using the same colors over and over again, but I kind of have like my palette that I always use typically, and it's really hard to explain, but it's just very intuitive. I think after working this way for so long, like it's kind of just, I can just tell when a color feels off, or like I can look in a corner and say this needs blue or green. It's really something I can't necessarily explain. But I did do some paintings of black and white and like grayscale to challenge myself. And so I'm still working on some of those, but I've done maybe 5.
What is the influence of technology and having access to all of this information all at the same time?
It's a huge influence. I think it changed my work. I think around the time, I think it might have been 2010, I had a studio in Times Square, and just that craziness, and at that time I could see the difference of how were interacting with the internet and feeling information overload. And so I think that it definitely changed my work, where I wanted to reflect that chaotic, environment.
You depict all of this information in areas of flat color that seem very similar to sign painting or screen printing or even cut paper. Why the emphasis on flat color?
Well, I think when I first started painting in school, taking figure drawing classes, you're like expected to have the figure kind of look exactly as they are. And my paintings were always the complete opposite of that. So I was kind of maybe a bit of rebellion in that way to challenge what a good painting is or how a painting's supposed to look. So I was always drawn to working in that way of like flatness, because that seemed bad, I guess, when I was in school to paint flat. But I always like to challenge that kind of stuff. So that's why I continue to work in flat color.
Now, you have a traveling show right now called Royal Flush, and it features about 10 years of work. And viewers can see this exhibition and see kind of your graduate school work and how it's transformed over time into your current work. What are some major developments that you have seen in your work and your approach to painting?
When I look at my older work compared to my work now, I could tell in some of my older paintings I was still trying to figure out who I was as an artist, and still kind of feeling trapped in my own trap of feeling like what a good painting looks like, or feeling the need to paint a figure as it looks more realistic, coming from like a more traditional art background, art education. So now I feel like my work is like a definite reflection of who I am.
What is next? What are you working on now?
Right now, I took a little vacation, and so to get replenished and get some new inspiration. But the next thing I'm going to do is a big installation in Palais de Tokyo. It's going to be like 8 walls of like kind of murals. So I'm going to do that, and then I don't know, we'll see.
Is there anything else you want viewers to know about your work here in the Modern?
I want the viewer to ask themselves questions and not come in thinking that it's a definite answer for every painting. I make the work so everyone can connect to it, and I'm not necessarily trying to dictate one answer to whoever's viewing the work. I want everyone to be a participant in the work.
Great. Well, that's a great place to end our conversation. Thank you so much for chatting with us today.
We want to thank Nina for speaking with us. For more information on the exhibition, go to themodern.org. That's it for Art This Week. Thanks for watching.
still got your Polaroid.